recording. Okay, and here we go.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Amy Snyder from the Connect and Communicate Series Planning Committee. Thank you all for joining us today. If you have not already done so, if there is more than one of you in the room, please go ahead and add that number to the chat box so we have it for our statistics. Our presentation will be recorded and made available at the Pennsylvania Library Association College and Research Division section of the PLA website for members. This session is brought to you by the College and Research Division Board. I'd like to thank the CRD Board for supporting the Connect and Communicate initiative. Our panelists today, Mross and Hailley Fargo, will be speaking about partnering with student service units to better meet student needs. Mross is the business librarian at Penn State Harrisburg Library. Her duties also include outreach coordination to the campus and community. Emily holds an MLIS from the University of Pittsburgh, an MED in Instructional Technology from East Stroudsburg University, and a BA in English and Journalism from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Her research focuses on innovative library outreach. Hailley Fargo is the Student Engagement Librarian at the Penn State University Park Library. In this role, Hailley provides liaison support, coordinates an aligned approach to student engagement across the Penn State system, does instruction, and helps with outreach events. Hailley's research interests revolve around reference services, peer-to-peer services in academic libraries, digital and information literacy, and undergraduate research. As Erin mentioned during the presentation, feel free to add questions to the chat box. I'll make a list of them for our panelists, and after the presentation is over, we'll open up the floor for attendees to ask questions. And with that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Hi, everyone. This is Emily. Thank you for joining us today. So we have a brief outline, and I will, whoops, too far. Okay. So Hailley and I are going to tell you a little bit more about ourselves, and then Hailley is going to talk about the search bar at University Park. Then I will talk about the Right Research Revised program at Penn State Harrisburg. And then together we're going to discuss some tips for your campus. And as Amy mentioned, we'll take questions at the end. If you have anything for me, if someone can just say it, because I'm sharing my screen so I cannot see the chat without bringing the chat up for everyone. So just let me know if there's anything that I need to address while I'm talking. So I'm Emily Mross. As Amy said, I'm the business librarian at Penn State Harrisburg. I've been here for almost 2 years, and we're coming on the 4th semester of Right Research Revised. So that was a program that I started pretty much right away when I got to Penn State Harrisburg. Previously, I was the library manager at the Monroe campus of Northampton Community College, and in that position, I was literally right next door in the same building to our Learning Center. So I worked very collaboratively with the director of the Learning Center to provide services that stop students from getting lost, going from place to place, and kind of wrapped around them to get tutoring support as well as research support from librarians. So that was really effective on my previous campus, and I really wanted to see what we could do at Penn State Harrisburg to bring similar services to our students there because they had been so successful previously.
All right, everyone. Hello, welcome. My name is Hailley Fargo, and as Amy said, I'm the Student Engagement Librarian at Penn State University Park campus. And I've been in this role for about 7 months now. And in this position, my focus is on student work that's happening in the libraries as it relates to student employment, being a liaison to non-academic units throughout campus, and then also thinking about collaborations and connections with the other Penn State librarians across the Commonwealth. And so bringing those 3 things together informs the work that I do. Previously, I was at Penn State University Park, and I was the evening reference and instruction librarian. And many of the things I'll talk about today with Writing Center collaborations and our service to search bar came out of the work that I did as the evening reference and instruction librarian. And finally, I do have some experience with building collaborations across units in previous positions that I've held. And also as an undergrad myself, I was a Writing Center tutor. And so I think a lot of that pedagogy and thought that I had as an undergrad informs the work that I do today as a librarian, which is very exciting. So with that, I'll move to the next slide and talk a little bit about the search bar from a broad point of view. So the search bar is a new service that started at Penn State University Park in September. And essentially the big picture of the search bar is that it's a suite of peer-to-peer services. And so we're bringing together peer research consultants, which are trained and hired through the library, our writing tutors that come out of a larger unit called Penn State Learning, and then technology tutors that are there to help people use different types of software, anything from Microsoft Excel all the way up to Photoshop and sort of everything in between. And so that is a service that we've brought together. And so the whole goal of the search bar is that those services are going to intersect and intertwine. So when a student comes into the space, they might think that they need help writing a thesis, but then realize that maybe they don't have enough research. So they can go talk to the peer research consultant. Or maybe they start with the peer research consultant and realize that they have to turn it into a PowerPoint and they haven't done it in a while. And so the tech tutor can help them. So it's helping. The whole point of the search bar is to help expose students to other services that might be useful for them during their time at Penn State. But in order to really think or understand how the search bar came to be and the collaboration we have with the Writing Center, I have to go back a little bit further to fall of 2016 when I first started and talk about the collaboration and relationship building I was doing with the Writing Center at that time. So when I first started at Penn State, one of the very first introductions I had was to the coordinator of the writing tutors at University Park, as well as the head of Penn State Learning. And the goal was to essentially bring together people from the library and the Writing Center to host Penn State's first international write-in. And this is an event, that was started at Swarthmore College. And essentially right around the end of the semester, universities are encouraged to hold a space where students can feel productive and get some of that end of the semester writing done. And so the Writing Center and the libraries had really wanted to do something, but just didn't have the personnel or the time to take on that task. So my job, as the introduction was made, was to help lead and implement the international write-in. So we were able to do that in the fall of 2016, and then we've done it 2 more times and starting to plan the 4th. So that's really how I got my start with collaborating with the Writing Center, was through this event, not necessarily related to the search bar, but just something else that's bringing those 2 units together. So while we were planning for the international write-in, on the next slide, there were some other conversations happening at the library that sort of worked hand in hand with the work I was doing with the Writing Center. So at University Park, there's our big complex, the Petit and Paternal libraries, and there were conversations happening within the library about our service model. The complex is very large. It's not necessarily clear how to get from one side of the library to another, and people end up getting lost or confused. And there were lots of desks that existed in the complex, over 10 different service points that when a student walks into the library, they could run into and ask a question. And those desks had different levels of training and were trained by different people. And so we were having conversations about, is there a change that we can make that would essentially, the big goal was to eliminate the bouncing patron, right? So when a patron comes in, they might ask a question at the first desk, the desk sends them somewhere else, maybe that desk sends them somewhere else. And so sometimes what would end up happening is a patron would give up. They were tired of being bounced from place to place, or they would get lost and never end up at the desk that they were sent to. So in these conversations, we were trying to figure out, how do we eliminate that bounce and really give the patron the services that they need right away? Another secondary goal of talking about the service model was thinking about increasing our exposure to of writing centers and writing tutors and tech tutors. So previously, the writing tutors had a group study room that they used, but they were only in the library for a couple of hours really late in the evening, so like 10 to midnight. And they were tucked away, and it was hard to figure out where they were, what they were doing. And so we wanted to find a way to sort of increase them, because we knew that they're a valuable service and students really appreciate and need writing help. And then we also had the tech tutors in a different group study room. They were here at different times, and they maybe weren't getting the exposure that they needed to be able to do the work that they've been trained to do. So trying to think about, how do we change our service model, expose these partners that are working with us, collaborating with us, and really bring these student services together in a meaningful way. And we were also influenced during these conversations by ideas with Learning Commons and Knowledge Commons pedagogy, the idea that if you bring services together, you're going to help expose students to different types. And they might say, oh, I didn't realize that Penn State had XYZ or something like that. And then also these concepts that we were talking about were also informed by peer-to-peer research. So as we know, might know in the library world, recently there's been lots of talk about, what does peer-to-peer research look like? What are the benefits? What are the challenges? And how can we do that? How can we train students to provide a high level of research to their peers? So all those conversations were happening as the international write-in was happening. And so it all came together to say, all right, we're going to move to the search bar, put it in the center of the Petit Paterno Library, and bring these three services together for a really meaningful way for students to find the resources that they need. So in the next slide, we talk about the planning is beginning. And so through my relationships with the Writing Center, I was able to meet with some Writing Center representatives throughout the summer of 2017. And what was really helpful was that the person that I was meeting with on a regular basis, she and I, because we had similar backgrounds in Writing Center work, we were able to really talk through the training plan that I was developing with other stakeholders in the library for our peer research consultants. So really trying to find ways that the Writing Center training and the peer research consultant training could complement each other, which is really fantastic to be able to have those conversations, especially from an outsider perspective who doesn't necessarily have that library background, was really useful. And so this woman, Karen, and I came up with a vision for different integrated services. And we would communicate with our bosses and other stakeholders to sort of say, this is what we're thinking about. Do you think it will work in the search bar? So our vision, some which we were able to meet in our first semester and others that we're still working towards, was thinking about how is our training complementing or maybe happening at the same time? And do eventually we want to move to shared staff meetings where writing tutors, peer research consultants, and tech tutors are all coming together for the same staff meeting. We also talked a lot about how we're keeping track of students that are coming into the space to help sort of justify and highlight the work that's happening by those students that are working in the space. So I was collaborating with our assessment department to think about how we track those. And the Writing Center had been originally using pieces of paper to keep track of students that were coming in. And so they were really interested in partnering with us and coming up with a shared form that students could fill out across the board to sort of say, I'm here in the search bar, I'm getting this sort of service. And then we were able to trigger a follow-up survey as well, so we can get feedback on how the space is functioning and working. We also tried to think about some potential barriers to success. And I think one of the biggest ones that I say in the slide is the extension of hours. So the writing tutors went from maybe having 10 or so hours a week to upwards of 60 hours that they were going to be in the search bar space. The search bar is open from Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then we're open on Fridays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it's a large chunk of time that they were going to have to account for and find funding, and students are going to be willing to be in those spaces. So we tried to think about what those potential barriers were and how we might meet them as we sort of ran into them as the semester got closer. So these conversations were happening. The semester begins, and then in September 2017, the search bar opens. So that's our space right now. There's sort of 3 cubicles where the different services sit, and students come in and they get directed to the appropriate service. So once the search bar was open, the conversation between us and the Writing Center definitely didn't stop. It continued. And I think what was really helpful is that we had regular meetings with both the Writing Center staff or leaders and then the tech tutor leaders to sort of discuss what was happening in the space, having that regular communication, but then also being comfortable in the moment to send an email to someone, when a student didn't show up, or there was a tradition from one of the services where, because their appointments were 45 minutes long, if there was 30 minutes left before the space closed, they would leave because they wouldn't have enough time to get that service in. So talking through those things while they were happening in the moment was super helpful in figuring out what was working and what wasn't working during the search bar. And then at the very end of the semester, we met to talk about sort of debrief what went really well, what didn't go so well, and how can we think about, where we want to go in the future and in the spring. And so I think having those honest conversations and sharing that feedback was really helpful. And we brought together a lot of different perspectives, which was useful in not only collaborating, but also solving problems. So if I think back on the fall and think about the lessons learned from the search bar, I think one of the biggest things that I took away from this collaboration was remembering to be patient and understanding that old traditions take time to adjust. If you think about the search bar space, we were bringing together a brand new tradition of peer research consultants with an established tradition of writing tutors, and then tech tutors who had been in our space but have been doing, they weren't necessarily connected to some of the other services. And so when you bring together 3 traditions, it's going to take some time to sort of figure out and sort of settle into things. So being patient was something that was really important for all of us to remember, that it was going to take some time to get used to it, to get into it, and to figure out how to best utilize the search bar space. As I mentioned previously, I think keeping open and honest communication between different stakeholders is really key as well. And so being able to say, this isn't working or this is working was really useful, because I think that grew our relationship. We trusted each other. And I think some of those previous relationships with the international write-in were a really good way to build that trust really quickly and right away, so that we could really dig into the work that the search bar was doing. And then I think the final thing that I learned from the search bar was that it's always important to listen to the students who work in that space, whether it be peer research consultants, writing tutors, or tech tutors. They're the ones that spend, in upwards of 8 to 10 hours, maybe more, in that space every week. And while I get in there from time to time, I only see a little bit of the bigger picture of what's happening in the search bar. So really making sure that I check in with the students, and that the Writing Center and the tech tutors do as well, so that we can bring that feedback together, so that we as leaders can make some of those decisions, but then also empower our students to figure out ways to solve problems as well. So with that, I think that's the big picture about the search bar and our collaborations, and I'll turn it over to Emily.
Thanks, Hailley. All right, let me advance that slide. Okay, so the program that I help coordinate here at Penn State Harrisburg is called Write, Research, Revise. So right now you're seeing our second semester flyer for Write, Research, Revise that we use to promote the program throughout our campus in the various courses that we were targeting, in the different buildings, and also through Facebook and emails to faculty. So a general overview of Write, Research, Revise is that this program targets the students that are in our required composition classes. So at Penn State Harrisburg and Penn State in general, students are required to take English 15 and an English 202, which comes in a few different stripes that I'll talk about later. But those are their core writing classes, and gets them familiar with research writing and writing in their discipline. What Write, Research, Revise is now, it's transformed a little bit in the 3 semesters that it's been going on, are 30-minute collaborative appointments. Students come in, they make an appointment ahead of time, hopefully, and then they meet with both a librarian and a writing tutor at the same time in the same appointment. So as Hailley mentioned, you want to try to stop that bouncing patron. For us, this is how to help eliminate some of the confusion of cross-referrals between our 2 departments. The students should bring in their final paper draft for us to review along with their sources. And then when they finish that appointment, they'll be leaving with strategies and ideas to help improve their paper overall, including the writing from the writing tutor and their research or sources that they're using to strengthen their argument from the librarian. So at Penn State Harrisburg, prior to fall 2016, we had a pretty big space crunch going on. We still do have a bit of one happening here currently, but we opened a brand new student enrichment center. Prior to the opening of that building, the Learning Center was dispersed across the campus. So they had outposts in several different buildings. One of them was also the library. So in that particular situation, if you had a writing tutor who was working with a student in the library, it would be very easy to say, well, I think you're having some trouble with your sources. Let's go over to the reference desk and we'll talk to one of the librarians or one of our reference associates, and they can help you get in touch with either the right librarian for your subject if it was a more advanced paper, or whoever's on the desk can help you with your search strategies if it was something from a lower level class where a more generalist approach could be used. Once the new building opened, the Learning Center opened a beautiful new location in the Student Enrichment Center, which took them out of all of these outposts. So now we do have that issue where if we want to cross-refer people, they have to not only leave the building, but walk across campus. So as I mentioned in my previous position, the library and the Learning Center were right next door to each other in the same building, and that was great because there wasn't too much space for them to get lost. And when everyone's in the same space as we were before the opening of the SEC, you can physically walk them to the desk. It's not going to take too much out of your day to do that. But once you're in 2 separate buildings, that creates a new host of problems because they have to leave this space and go outside and walk to another place and find that other place. And a lot of students might just say, "It's not worth it. I'm fine. I'll be okay." And they finish their appointment wherever they are, and then they either don't get the writing help that they need or they don't get the research help that they need. When we were co-located, and this was prior to my arriving at Penn State, the set director of the Learning Center and Bernadette Lear, who is still at Penn State Harrisburg, but previously held the outreach role that I am now holding, worked on some collaborative projects around finals and other times where they would have all the service points in one area to kind of help students at those high need times. And the shared space made those referrals easy. So when I came on board, they also hired a new writing coordinator. And you might find that when you get new people on board, it's a little bit easier to get new ideas started because we're so fresh and or naive that we want to take on extra work. So when I got started, one of the first things that I really wanted to do was to find a way to collaborate with the Learning Center regarding research writing, because it's such a big part of our student experience here. They do have at least 2 core courses that deal with research writing, and then they need to continue to write and research in their discipline. So when we open a new space, you want to promote that space, and we want to promote the services of the Learning Center as well. We also at Harrisburg have a really big increase in undergraduate students. So in 2016, we finally surpassed the 5,000th student mark on campus. Most of those students are undergraduates, and a lot of them are coming from other countries, so they need a little bit more support in writing in English and things like that. So we definitely wanted to beef up the services that we were offering to our undergraduate students as they were embarking in a new adventure in research and writing. So I had this idea that I came to the Learning Center with, and they said, "Oh, that sounds really great, but you know, everyone is kind of understaffed, and we want to make sure that the time that we spend is most effectively used." So originally, I had envisioned just kind of co-locating again, bringing myself to the Learning Center, plopping down for certain hours during the day with my laptop, and if there were students that were having appointments at the Learning Center who needed research help, they could be referred to me, and I would already be in that space. The Writing Center and the Writing Coordinator said, we would like it to be a little bit more concrete so that we're not wasting your time and our time with people that are not going to show up or maybe don't need help in that particular time. And this is actually backed up by the literature. We do have some references at the end that we'll be sharing with you. And in the research that I did, a lot of information was found that doing these types of co-location programs where you just kind of show up at one place, and specifically showing up at a writing center and hoping that people come to you, are not super successful, and they're not the best use of staff time. So what we wanted to do was create some type of event-based programming that we could promote, highly publicize, and have it as a high need area of the semester so that there would definitely be demand for the service. So right before finals, when all of those papers start to be coming due, that is when all the students definitely try to book appointments with their librarian and book appointments at the Writing Center to get help with the papers. So that seemed like a great time. Our papers are usually due that very first day of finals week. So we tried to book things through the week before and maybe midweek of the week prior to that, when they're all working on their papers and definitely have a need. Messing up or trying to lose that bouncing patron, we wanted to both be in one space. And as I mentioned, the Student Enrichment Center is a beautiful new location of the Learning Center with a lot of collaborative space. In the library, we are very crowded now, and it's hard to kind of find a space that you can get some quiet and can work together in groups. It gets a little noisy here. I know that some people like to keep libraries quiet, but our library gets a little noisy. It's a lot quieter over in the Learning Center. And we were able to use the software that the Learning Center already has to schedule appointments. So the writing coordinator would go into their software settings on their scheduler and set up Write, Research, Revise blocks, and then students could go online and book their own appointments or book them in person ahead of time. So we didn't have to worry about hoping that people would show up. We could promote it ahead of time and they could book an appointment. The one big limitation that we had at the start of the program that we still have now is that it is just me as the one librarian working on the service and just the one writing tutor who is also the writing coordinator that is supporting this service. So the two courses that we've been targeting with this particular program are English 15, which is the first required writing course that students are going to be taking in composition. We have another class prior to that, but on our campus, this is the first course that the library actually provides instructional support for. So there's CAS 100, which comes before this, but we at Harrisburg do not provide library instruction for that course. So English 15 is kind of their first introduction to the library's research offerings. And we have a librarian who comes to almost every single course section to present a one-shot for them on library research. In 2016, English 15 had a common syllabus, which was great because we knew what we were going to be expecting. And each student that came in, they had the same kind of set of expectations, and we could kind of we also knew that they had to complete a final writing portfolio. So a lot of the students would just be revising and expanding papers that they had already written. So that was great. We knew that they had kind of a almost finished product that could use a lot of polishing. And in my case, for a lot of those students, they had the idea down, but some of their sources were not great. So they were taking on this controversial topic, as a lot of students do in those introductory courses, but they weren't using the best sources to back up their work. So they would be using someone's blog to talk about why we should legalize marijuana or something like that. And that provided a really easy teachable moment to say, I understand your reasoning here, but let's see if we can find some type of study or maybe a government report that has these statistics in a hard copy that's from a more credible source that will really help strengthen your paper. In 2017, the common syllabus went away. So they're still doing research papers, but the topic may change from section to section, and that is something that we definitely experienced in the fall. But those students were still very prepared, even though they weren't necessarily having to turn in a research portfolio as they had to previously. They were very on the ball, they were very motivated, so that was great. And so we treated Write Research Revise for the English 15 and English 202 as a second shot of instruction for them that was really personalized. These courses are very large. Sometimes they can be over 30 students. So it can be really difficult as a librarian in a one-shot setting to really make a personal impact and kind of go around and work with all of the students and make sure that you're addressing their individual research questions. This allowed for the opportunity to do that. English 202, which is a course that we're trying to work with, but we're having some challenges working with, is the next level. It should be taken as a sophomore, but I often find, and my colleagues often find, that that does not happen. Students are sometimes seniors taking English 202, and this is supposed to serve as their introduction to research writing in their discipline. So we have one for the humanities, one for the social sciences, one for business, and then one for pardon the expression, the hard sciences. So they also almost all get an instruction session from their librarian. We're really heavy on the B, C, and D section, so that's social sciences, business, and hard sciences, not a ton of humanities offerings for this course, but we each take on the sections related to our liaison area and try to provide instruction for them. For most of the courses, they have to do some type of recommendation report based on research that they have conducted. So they might be writing a technical report, they might be writing some type of business report. It's really specifically tied to their discipline. In 2016, which is the very first semester that we offered Write Research Revise, we used 1 hour-long appointments. Due to our staffing capacity, we were only able to offer 6 appointments. And since we had so few appointments available, we only offered them to English 15. But all of the appointments filled in advance. We had a really great time working with the students, and we got really positive feedback from everyone that participated. In the spring, we expanded greatly. So in spring 2016, we offered 32 appointments. In order to facilitate that many appointments, we shrunk the time to half an hour, and we split them evenly. So we had 16 appointments for English 15 and 16 appointments for English 202. Now, you might remember that I mentioned previously that the English 15 students were very motivated and super well prepared, and that was very true for both the fall and spring semesters. English 202 students, not so much. So we actually only had 3 students come in for English 202, and almost all of those students didn't really even have a paper. They had an idea, but then some of them weren't really sure what the requirements for their paper were, and they didn't bring a syllabus. And I, working with the English 202Ds, which are the business writing students, I knew what their assignment was. So for that particular student, I was able to kind of guide them through that process, and that person did make some good strides and reached out to me for more help later. But the other students, we had to kind of, okay, well, here's what you should think about to get started with your topic to start writing your paper, not, okay, you have some research, here's how we can improve this strategy. So that's something that we're still working on, is how do we improve this for the next level of the research writing. We also attempted in spring 2016 to add appointments at midterm, especially for 202. They are required to submit kind of a draft version of their report or a proposal, and we thought maybe we could get some interest in getting help with those. No one showed up, so we canceled all of them. This fall, we went back to just working with English 15 while we're trying to kind of negotiate what's the best way to get English 202 on board. We offered 30 appointments and we filled about over half of them. We are again limited to just one tutor and one librarian, but the students that we worked with were incredibly positive about the experience, and we are definitely going to keep offering this. So outcomes for this particular program, the successes is that when we offered our first round and our second round, all of the appointments that we offered for English 15 were filled. So that is great. This semester, we filled over half of them, and I think in the spring, we're going to get even more demand as we continue to work with the faculty and we're negotiating how we're dealing with the lack of common syllabus. We send out a post survey each semester to the students who participate, and all of the feedback that we've gotten from those students has been incredibly positive. Primarily what I find interesting is that most of the students who respond to the survey have used the Writing Center before, but they haven't used the library before. So aside from the librarian coming into their course and doing the one-shot instruction, they had not come to the library to seek out a librarian for research help. And after research revised, they said that they would be more likely to do that. So I thought that was definitely a positive thing. I've also gotten positive feedback anecdotally from the course faculty that teach these classes. We haven't sent out a survey to them, but I do work with them to do one-shot instruction, as well as my colleagues do that as well. And so the feedback that we've gotten from them is that this has been great and has been helpful in improving student performance and final papers. Our students for English 15, whether or not they had a common syllabus or not, were always prepared, they were engaged, and they definitely made progress by the end of the appointment and really left with strategies to make their papers even better. And we also had students that followed up for additional help after their appointment was over. So we can see that they said that they wanted to use the library more, and then they actually did. Our challenges specifically were English 202 students. They weren't really as engaged with the appointments in signing up for them as we had hoped. When they came to appointments, they weren't really prepared, and so that was challenging. As I mentioned a few times, we only have 2 people that are working on this program. We are working to expand it, and I do have librarians who are interested, but at this time, our Learning Center is very short-staffed and are working on hiring new people, so until their staffing capacity is restored, we're going to continue to be a little bit limited in how many appointments we can offer. Another challenge was losing that common syllabus, but we're slowly overcoming the fallout from that and learning more a little about what each of the faculty are now assigning that they don't have a common syllabus. So we'll be ready next semester and know a little bit more about what to expect from the students that are coming in. And then finally, no one was interested in midterm appointments, and so we're probably not going to try that again. We are working with English 202 to try to develop incentives to encourage more student participation at that level. It is really important for students to learn how to do research in their discipline and learn those discipline-specific tools that they're going to need as they continue throughout their program. So we do have some faculty who are interested in maybe offering extra credit or something like that that might draw additional English 202 students into the program and get them to participate. We also want to work on evaluating student success in a more concrete way. So we do have the survey feedback that says, yes, I like this, you should do it again, and I'll use the library more, and that's great. But we're also going to be working with faculty to actually evaluate the papers of students that use our service and students that don't, to see if there's any improvement in their information literacy and writing skills, so that we can kind of show additional value with hard evidence rather than a survey feedback. And finally, we're going to try to add librarians and writing tutors so that we can increase capacity and times offered. I've also spoken to some other departments on campus about expanding the offerings. We just started offering a new housing environment for incoming students called Discover House. And so that is for students who are undecided about their major. And I've talked with Housing and Residence Life about maybe offering these Write, Research, Revise in that space to reach out to those students specifically to help with their retention and engagement with the curriculum. And we also have a graduate course that I've been working collaboratively with the writing coordinator on research papers for people who may be coming back to school after a long time away and are now being presented with the challenge of writing a research paper. So we may pilot something like Write, Research, Revise in the summer, specifically targeted at some graduate level courses. So now Hailley and I are going to discuss some tips for success at your campus. So Hailley, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can do that, Emily. So I think the biggest one that Emily and I both saw across the board with our two examples is that making introductions is really important, especially when you have new people come in or new spaces are created. So Emily and I both benefited from coming into the Penn State system, having people that were our mentors or bosses or colleagues that helped make those introductions, and then sort of capitalizing on the opportunity for new spaces. And we both think that that's really helpful when you think about starting collaborations or continuing collaborations.
And I would definitely agree with that. It helps when people are fresh and new and can kind of have the capacity to take on new programs, but maybe just restart some old collaborations, start on a new foot. And if there's anyone else that's been brought into the conversation or that could be brought into the conversation that maybe hadn't been before, that can be a really good way to start something great and brand new for your program. Going along with that is build off any existing relationships. It was important for me coming into this new role that someone who was still there had currently done to talk to them about, okay, well, what have you done in the past? And what didn't work? What worked really well that maybe we want to incorporate into what we're doing now? So I think that it's important, even when you're starting something new, to kind of really respect what has happened previously. And especially if those people maybe now are in more supervisory roles or things like that, listen to their feedback and really make them a partner in what you're doing, even if they aren't going to have a day-to-day relationship with what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, and Emily, I would agree with that as well, especially for my particular context with the search bar, understanding different traditions that groups had, things that they had done for years in the past, and being respectful of those traditions while also trying to be innovative in how we provide those services. And then also follows really nicely into the third point, which is thinking about how we're keeping track of the people that use our services. So gathering existing data to help understand some of those existing relationships, and then finding ways to keep track of that new data is really crucial as you think about those collaborations, and really also get people excited and motivated to keep that collaboration going. If you've got some of those things to say, oh yeah, we helped X students and we can see this growth over time, I think that really motivates people to keep going with the collaboration and think of new ways to make that collaboration work.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure everyone is in a situation on their campuses where you do need to kind of back up what you're saying. And so my program, I think, is really good and it is really helping a lot of people, but it makes it more engaging to other stakeholders when I can provide them with some numbers and some satisfaction surveys and things like that that say, yes, like it's not just me saying that this is a good thing. The students that are actually participating and the faculty that teach these courses also agree that they like this service. I think it's really important to kind of come out with a plan that involves all the stakeholders, brainstorm what this is going to look like. So I started with my brainstorm of just doing the co-located service hours, and after having a discussion with my other additional stakeholders said, okay, that's not going to work, so let's all come to the table and let's brainstorm what is going to make this the most successful thing. Having a really concrete plan then makes it easier to kind of justify to my supervisor, to the learning center coordinator, why I need to be out of the library doing this particular service. And this is how long I'm going to be away, and this is the outcome that we are anticipating. And then you can use the data that you collected to kind of say, did you meet those goals?
Yeah, I think having a vision is really important, thinking about what the potential collaboration could look like and understanding that some things will happen right away and other things might take a little bit of time, which gets down to number 6, but I won't get there quite yet. The other thing that's really important is keeping that open communication between everybody that's involved, all the stakeholders, just letting people know what's happening, what's going on, where are there tricky spots or barriers, and then sort of brainstorming again, how are we going to solve some of those problems? But that open communication is really useful, and really building trust and getting stuff done.
Completely agree. And that takes us to number 6, which is continue to revise. So I'm sure that Hailley has also found some things that you can't add right at the beginning, or things that you thought were going to work, but then didn't work out so much. So for us, we really thought that English 202 students would be right on board with the same as English 15 and really want to keep up and get a lot of extra help. That hasn't really been the case so far. So we are continuing to revise how we reach out to that group, because once you're not a freshman, some things change, and we need to make sure that we're reaching out to them to engage them in this important service. We also thought that midterm appointments would be great, and no one was interested. So, try things, and if they don't work out, take it off the table for the moment and try to rework it and try to do it again in a new way.
That's so true, Emily. With the search bar, a lot of things that myself and the Writing Center people talked about over the summer were sort of our big vision for what we wanted. And as soon as the semester started and the search bar opened, we're like, we don't have time or capacity to make those things happen. So we had to sort of take a step back and think more of the long game for how we could do revisions, probably over the summer, to really make some big changes so that in the fall of 2018, we've got a search bar that's been revised, taking into account all the lessons we learned in that first year.
And so finally, we're just going to share some really helpful references that we've worked with in developing these programs and writing about them. The ones that I would specifically point out, there was a survey recently done and published in the Journal of Academic Librarianship, which is Jackson 2017, Collaborating for Student Success, an email survey of US libraries and writing centers. So that kind of gives you an overview of what is going on in academic libraries in general, and what kind of partnerships are they having or not having with writing centers on their campus. I would also recommend writing the academic paper from Estela Palomino and Ferreira Guevara, as well as Working Together, Library and Writing Center Collaborations, and Librarians Without Borders Reaching Out to Students at a Campus Center. That one was one of the key ones that kind of pointed to just simple co-location, or just showing up with your laptop and hoping that students will come, is not necessarily the best strategy for getting engagement.
And I'll put in one plug for a reference. The first one, Andrea Baer, The Information Literacy and Writing Studies and Conversation, is a really great book coming out of the field of library science, but really bringing in writing center pedagogy and thinking really carefully and very, it's an exciting book to read about the different connections that we as library researchers and writing centers have, and the way we can bring those synergies together.
And now we'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
So at this point, feel free to use the chat box to put questions in. If you want to use your mic, you're welcome to. You're welcome to raise your hand in case we have multiple people wanting to ask questions at the same time. All right, Ansley, if you'd like to ask your question, go for it. Erin, if you could unmute her, that would be awesome.
I just did.
Thank you.
Ainsley, we can't hear you. You may want to use the chat box to go ahead and type in your question.
Oh, she put something in the chat box. She has a question for Hailley. Where are you getting the peer tutors and writing center tutors?
Great question, Ansley. So the peer research consultants, those peer tutors, they're actually coming out of the library. So myself and a couple other librarians designed peer research consultant training. And we lucked out with our peer tutors is that the 5 students that we started with in the fall had previously worked for the library. So they had a lot of really great background knowledge about how the library systems work and doing research. And I had worked with all of them individually in my previous job. So it was really great to build a training program for them that sort of knew that they were at an advanced level and just added an extra layer on top. We did hire 2 new peer research consultants, and so myself and those same colleagues designed a different program to account for students that are going to come in with not a ton of library experience in terms of maybe doing research or really knowing how to use those library systems. In terms of the Writing Center tutors, those are coming out of the Penn State Learning. And so they're a different unit on campus that had been for a long time collaborating with the library and using our space. So we essentially just asked them, would it be okay if we had a few more writing tutors come throughout the week and be in this more centrally located space.
And I would be happy to provide the Write Research Revise flyer with our files that we're going to upload to the CRD blog after the presentation.
Thank you. Again, if you'd like to use the mic, feel free to use raise your hand and we can unmute you. Okay, we have another question. Did the extra tutors require an increase in funding? And if so, how did you get support?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the search bar context, it did require some extra funding, and the library and the Learning Center ended up working out an agreement to sort of help cover those costs. But that's a question that we've continued to revisit throughout the semester. And I think another thing that also happened was that because we were making such a big jump from a couple hours a week to almost 60, we did have to sort of remember that it's going to take a couple semesters for us to sort of set that expectation that the search bar is open. So for the Writing Center, hours on Sunday were a little bit harder in the morning to get. And so we just had to sort of communicate with our peer research consultants. This is when the Writing Center is in, this is when they're not. And eventually we'd like to be at full capacity. But yeah, that extra funding is always something that's on our agendas when we're meeting and talking about how can we sustain this service and best support it to be able to pay the students for the work they're doing.
Okay. Erin went ahead and put the survey in the chat box, so make sure you fill that out. We do appreciate the feedback that we get, but if anyone else has questions, please feel free to keep adding those into the chat box.
I had a question. This is Erin for the group. I know today we were, featuring Emily's and Hailley's projects. Is anybody currently involved in their own collaboration project on campus? Or will this help you build one?
So we have a comment that not through tutoring, but we've had a few joint instruction sessions. Another comment, yes, at Penn State Berks, we are partnering with our Writing Center on events and activities. Emily and I have actually discussed this before. So
Yes,
awesome.
I love it when people are doing more of this because students need both.
Westchester University campus is currently building relations with the Writing Center, which is housed in the library, but has worked fairly independently until recently.
I would recommend that you guys, if you had not already read that, read this is, hold on, Meyer, Forbes, and Bowers, the Research Center, Creating an Environment for Interactive Research Consultations. That was about kind of building that partnership for students within the library space. So and they were already co-located and decided to make it into a brand new space for these co-located services. So maybe you're not building a new space, but that might give you some good ideas for how to build that relationship.
We have another comment here. At Barron, we have the Writing Center located in the library building, and we have tech support desk. But I think we need to be more collaborative, so these are great ideas to get started. Thank you. Okay, at PSU Shendango, our tutoring center is the SHARC.
We do call it the Shark.
The Shark, and we had Shark Month with me and our staff member providing extra services during the lunch hours.
Mm-hmm.
At Del Valle, we have a good relationship with our writing center, but we do not have a collaboration at this point. This session has given us some good ideas. Emily and Hailley, please forgive me, but was your contact information somewhere in the PowerPoint that we shared?
I have, yes, it's on the very, very last slide that I,
Okay.
Nope, actually it's not. It was on, nope. I will add it.
Okay.
I will add it right now.
Just thinking if anyone had any further questions for you. It sounds like a lot of people maybe have something started, but are looking to grow that. Right, well, not seeing any more questions or comments at this point, I just want to thank Emily and Hailley for sharing with us today. I also want to thank all of you for joining us. Again, Erin had put in the chat box the survey. If you could fill it out for us, that would be wonderful. If you registered for a group for today's session, if you receive an email with a link to the survey, and if you would please share the link with the other members of your group. Again, the feedback will help us determine what direction to take our programming. As a reminder, the recording of this presentation will be available to CRD members later this week through the PALA website. And if you're not a Pennsylvania Library Association member and you're interested in becoming a member, please feel free to email Erin Burns. Her email address is emb28@psu.edu, and she'll have the appropriate person contact you. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.